This conference will now be recorded.
In front of it. Yeah. You didn't drink it here.
My mom and maybe, you're funny. Usually I have 2 a day. I broke my 2 a day.
Oh, did you?
Let's just say.
Did you?
2 tours lights a day.
Anyway, my mom and Heidi are still in.
Oh, are they?
They're on their way to Berlin now.
Oh, nice. So who all went? Everybody?
My sisters, myself, and mom.
So again, you were the only one.
This is my family. I got great boys.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Future hope.
Like I said, I never left the toilet seat up.
It's recording. I'm right upstairs if anybody needs anything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nita.
You're welcome.
It was.
Did you keep,
Yeah, I have my copy here.
you do?
Yep.
All right, so Peter needs a copy. Hang on,
I have a marked up note.
The section.
the definitions.
Okay.
Hey, was I prepared or what?
You were.
Once.
And is.
Call this meeting to order.
Yes, please.
Start with pledge of allegiance to the flag of
The United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you want to take these in the order you got them presented?
Yes. So I thought Mike Werdestelling, I mean, at this point, we don't need him, okay. But we just need to just go over the definitions that are going to be incorporated into the land use code, but also refer back to the short-term rentals. So if you want me to read it, so that a short-term rental, a dwelling unit that is rented in whole or part to any person or entity for a period of less than 30 consecutive nights and includes any residential building or apartment, single or two-family dwelling, condominium, townhouse, guest house, cottage, cabin, or accessory dwelling. So then you would have to refer back to the land use code to see what an accessory dwelling is, which is rented as a living quarters with kitchen for any period less than 30 consecutive nights. This definition excludes timeshares, hotels, bed and breakfast establishments, and school or nonprofit dormitories. Rental means an agreement granting use or possession of a residence in whole or part to a person or group in exchange for consideration valued in money, goods, labor, credits, or other valuable consideration. Use of a short-term rental by a record owner of a property shall not be considered to be a rental under this section. Anybody have any problems with that?
I think the only issue in there, possibly because we were talking about eliminating bed and breakfast, so we should have bed and breakfast.
I know, and do we want to jump to that and talk about, do you want to, I mean, honestly, I think, so a bed and breakfast, if you wanted to be a bed and breakfast, you'd have to go to the review board, because it's a conditional use in certain districts. I think, I still see a need for bed and breakfast.
And I see a need for it. I don't know that they need to be separated out because they could just apply for a posted permit and run it as a bed and breakfast, right?
They could.
In any case, they need to go to the review board if they apply for bed and breakfast.
No, well, in any case, do they need to go to the review
Yeah,
board?
like in all cases.
And, well, if they don't want to be a bed and breakfast, they can be a short-term rental.
Right.
But that means it's a bedroom and a bathroom and not an entire unit with a kitchen. Can you see any of the big houses on Hillcrest or even on Signal Hill still wanting to use that?
I mean, you got the Blazer House, used to be a bed and breakfast. And
Well, I know, but I don't know if that would be grandfathered because they haven't used it as that.
for 15, 20 years.
Yeah. We're just talking about keeping bed and breakfast. I'm not arguing, but I'm just pointing out that I think some of the houses in the Signal Hill, Hillcrest area that have a number of rooms might be still want the opportunity to be called a bed and breakfast. If it's allowed in that district. If it's allowed in that, but you say get rid of it?
Just an excuse to do this short-term rental. When you're like a hotel, everybody doesn't know, it's for the bed and breakfast anyway. People come on the weekend, they go, and for a couple of days, they go. It's the same
Okay,
use,
it's
same kind
I'm
of use.
just pointing that out.
And there's no requirement currently for a bed and breakfast to have someone there at night, correct?
Nope.
So what we're doing is eliminating that possibility so that now if they want to be a bed and breakfast, they become hosted.
Right,
So I go with that.
okay, so we're going to eliminate the definition of bed and breakfast.
Okay, so we'll be the same as the town, which
Yes.
is a positive.
Yes,
And then on this first section, as Mark pointed out, eliminate that line, the breakfast line.
where is that?
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Your list of condos.
Oh, thank you.
Remember where it says
Current fees.
timeshares, hotel?
Yep, got it. All right, bed and breakfast establishments, okay. All right, we good with that?
Yep, I am.
Okay, village hosted short-term rental. Property is located within the village of Lake Placid. A short-term rental in which the host is a resident and an owner who lives at the property for at least 184 days per calendar year and is home overnight during the term of each rental. Okay. Do you want me to read the town hosted?
I don't think we need to read all these, but, and then Anita hopefully will put this up for people at home that want to read them.
Okay,
Do you
And
want
they may be tweaked a little bit because we've already had a couple of discussions about how much, the definition should just describe what it is, the permit.
and Art had that same point yesterday,
So in
that,
other words, don't give like 90 days or
Right.
something.
Right,
Just
that's legislation, that's. you know,
exactly,
that's
make the
law.
definition
The
so if the
definition
days
should be, so we don't have to
change.
change definitions every time we want to change the law.
Okay, good point.
So everything that's circled on yours is what we're talking about.
right,
See where it has the circling? So we'll just eliminate those so that they go into the law, not the definition.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the part about the village hosted, the 184 days describes what hosted means. So that's not legislation necessarily.
Right.
But some of these other things.
We compared it to, instead of saying Mayor Devlin's position, you'd say the mayor's position, so that when I'm not mayor, you don't have to change the law because it has my name in it. And if you knock out the number of days, it's the same idea. You don't have to worry every time you change. Okay.
So the town is also eliminating the
They're
sub
gonna
section.
these are gonna get tightened up quite a bit. They're gonna lose a lot of the language that talks about existing condominium, townhomes, old military road, gateway cars. That's all gonna be listed in the law, what's allowed in each district. What are gonna, the definitions are gonna,
So it's
identify
redundant.
the type of permit it is. And then in the law, you'll say they're allowed in this district, that district, whatever.
Yeah, but it isn't the redundancy, Peter. It's the fact that if you change the number of nights that you're allowed, you change anything, you don't have to go back and change the whole definition. Just change the law.
Makes sense.
So that takes care then of town hosted, takes care of village unhosted, correct? Town unhosted,
yes.
lodging short-term rentals. Do we have any questions there?
That is a town,
That's a North Alva thing.
Okay,
Yes.
so we didn't have any, the only thing we would have had there is, and I didn't think we did. Okay.
well, corridor short-term rental is going to refer to us, which is the village's interpretation of, what the lodging is. The one question, so what the town is asking is that it's only road facing. And
Yes.
we had talked about, it didn't matter to us whether they were road frontage or not, along the corridors, not village center, but along the corridors.
I would go for the road facing, but I'll leave that to the rest of the board to see what they say.
And this does not include Main Street. It's corridor.
Main Street's the next one.
Main
Well,
Street's the next one, so.
right.
So.
Well,
is
wait
this-
a minute, Peter, this does include Main Street. The Main Street terminology is from Brewster Park to the town hall. So when we have Main Street from Governals all the way down to the red light, that's still Main Street, which would fall into this corridor.
Give us an
So,
example.
I mean, is, if you're 2 houses back, they're still allowed to be in the corridor? I'm kind of with Art, it should be on the highway. But then you have to change the whole,
And unfortunately, some
whole
of the districts that are identified already, unless you want to change all the zoning districts now too.
Yeah, yeah.
They show that the properties behind are in that district, so you have to be careful to say, if you're gonna allow something in a district, you may be doing the houses stacked in the same, they may fall into the district, but is that what you want? You only want them on the main drag, or you want everybody in that district to be able to do that? Like Main Street, on Main Street between Brewster and, that district goes up halfway up the hill to Hillcrest in a lot of spots. So you could have multiple houses that you're trying to reorganize, as it were, that would fall into that district, and that would be an allowable use in a district, unless you narrow it down to say it's got to be frontage.
It's a geographical thing.
Yeah.
I still vote for Main Street facing, but what do you guys say?
Yeah, but then you have to change the,
So we're here to do, right? It's just a matter of saying it's changed. When we're filing, right?
We wouldn't have to change the codes.
I mean, you'd have to change.
I don't
We'd
think
have
so.
to change the map,
Not if we say Main Street facing in that corridor district.
Right. Wouldn't have to change it.
We wouldn't have to change the map.
if we say Main Street facing,
Right.
If
If that's what we want to do.
Or, whatever you want to call it.
that's going to change something that you've wanted to.
Well, but if it's grandfathered, it's grandfathered. I mean,
Oh,
let's
true
face
that, yeah.
it. So, I mean, this is just what's our policy, and I just think it ought to be, let's say at some point in the future, we decide to change it, we could change it. For now, I say we stick to our guns and go Main Street facing.
What does that affect in the corridor? I'm trying to think of what.
So on Main Street, again, it goes some properties up. It's easier to show you. In color here. So, Village Center. It's this pink area. So if it's hard to see, but there's a couple properties up behind, it spreads out, right? It goes up here, it goes other places. Sentinel Road, Sentinel in the village, there's multiple stacked properties on the gateway, on the corridor.
Is it because they have a Main Street address? Is that how come they become part of that, or is it just the way they drew it?
Well, I don't know what the original you guys built.
Like somebody going up Marcy Street would still have a Marcy address? Is it just the way it was done?
I'm not specifically sure what you're talking about now.
The color coding of the district.
So the districts sometimes don't just, are not limited to the houses right on the main.
If they have access off of Main
They
Street.
have access off, right.
Yeah.
So.
So that was what you determined to create, okay.
I think it is, yes. So if it had access off of.
But like I say, on Sentinel, there's like 2 and 3 of them sometimes. They all have
Yes,
the
and they all have
driveway.
right-of-ways.
Yeah, and right-of-ways and so forth. So again, that's your call, whether the town seems to want to say just it's got to be the house right on the main drag, not the 2 behind it or whatever. And that's their prerogative, so you guys decide that you want to do that.
That would be my role.
And that's what the town wants to do?
Yeah. Right now.
Do you guys have a preference?
No, I would go with the,
One's against one step towards being closer to the town's lives.
on the highway.
Did you write that one down, Jack?
Yeah.
Did you agree with that or not? You don't care? Yeah, I mean,
I guess I'm trying to see what either the positive or the negative to this is. I mean, are there current people that have? I don't know.
I mean, it's behind.
There are, okay.
There's behind is more like residential, if you will. I mean, no commercial establishment is going to move into the back, with the exception of
And the
STRs.
further back you go, the more it touches the next residential.
The next
Yeah, the
district on the
district
other,
on the side.
Yes.
okay.
And then you get into the one neighbor has
You
it,
know
the other one doesn't.
where State Farm puts all this,
Right,
his
and-
houses behind.
Yeah, Liberty Hill.
State Farm would have, because he's on the road, the building where the office is, if that was a short-term rental, that would be okay.
Yeah.
according- But there's houses behind that now, yeah, they have access because there's a right of way or, an easement to get back there. But they're actually closer to Liberty Hill and other residential neighborhoods.
Sure.
You want them to be short-term rentals as well, again, your call, I'm just pointing out why the town is going to be going against that.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Good, I like that.
all right, and then Main Street,
Same thing, street facing.
it does, it says street front spacing as a short is prohibited. Street front must be utilized as a commercial business.
Okay, one thing I had back on corridor, pardon me if I missed it there, but what about Saranac Avenue? Is that listed in there?
Yes, on third line down, property must front on Saranac Avenue. See that?
Wilmington Road.
Gateway corridor, property must front on Saranac Ave.
Gateway corridor, property must front on Wilmington Road, Sentinel, Cascade.
Wait, do
You
you have?
skipped over, sir, unless you don't have it.
Unless, originally, Emily, it wasn't
Oh,
on
you
there. Okay, so that's an
Fine.
old copy.
Do I get credit for a cat?
Yeah, you do, you're good. So, yes.
So that's there on the copy?
It
Yes.
is.
Is it on yours, Peter?
Yes.
Oh, so you got it. We're on page.
She doesn't date her revisions, so you never know when you pull it over.
The latest and greatest?
And
Okay.
I have the old one too, so don't feel bad.
All right, and then the last one is just confirming the definition of a hotel motel, having a minimum of 5 rental. Right now, the current is anything over, is it 2 or 3?
This hotel.
2, yes.
Redwood, used to be. I'm fine with that.
Okay. The one thing, do I need to mention STAR, that they're not gonna use STAR as, so in this definition, the town wanted to use STAR as proof of residence?
Town attorney said.
Yes.
They advised against that.
So what they wanna use is either voter registration or your driver's license, which,
Put your mailing address.
Yeah.
I'm sure the attorneys can find a way to prove you're a local resident.
I think the issue was the STAR is income based, and then you're sitting on a whole nother category for potential issues with,
So is that everything?
you know, only getting income based people.
Yeah,
Have to get the forms because everybody else is exempt, or I don't know. I don't know about it, but that's the lawyer said. Don't use it in there.
It's on the chain anyway.
I've got other things if you don't.
go right ahead.
Okay, I hope, I don't know, so I don't know if I got all these emails to you or not, but someone in Beach Hill was mentioning that they've got people renting, some of them rent, some of them don't. I think they were actually pushing towards not allowing vacation rentals in Beechwood, this particular email. Beechwood does not have a homeowners association. It only has one for the beach rights. It's not a true homeowners association. Do we treat that like we're going to be treating Deerwood, or the town is treating Deerwood, and considering it a protected neighborhood?
I think right now, as it stands, the way it's zoned, it would be.
Protected.
Because it's town and village
That's what Dean
residential.
put on there, but then when we started carving people out, I think we mentioned that. But I kind of look at that as one that's more like Deerwood.
No, if we go by what districts we're gonna allow unhosted rentals, town and village residential, that's what it is, and so it wouldn't be allowed any new
Okay.
ones.
We're all in agreement on that. You didn't, I don't know that we had that before, but okay, that's good. And,
The town's doing that as well, because most of it's.
well, Deerwood, but I think if you come down to a homeowners association, which I would take the example of Pine Hill, they regulate themselves, they've got a homeowners association. I think that's the differentiation between Beechwood and.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other email that I've gotten is day limit on hosted. And I know we've been around on that. We threw out one thing, Jackie found that it was the other. And we do have one little village residence that is currently hosted, that does rent quite a bit of the year, and he says that helps him be allowed to live there. I agree with that, and then we thought about possibly taking people, the new people that were hosted, and making them be 90 days until we had a chance to enforce them. But I think just leave it alone, be consistent.
I was never under the impression that hosted was gonna be limited.
Okay.
It doesn't make any
What about you,
sense.
Jack?
Original law was
I mean, I'm good with hosted being unlimited.
That's correct, and then what we So Janet, I think once all is said and done, we're gonna have to repeal the current law and replace it with things that are in place.
Okay,
So that you don't have to go back to,
Yeah, sure.
14 pages and go, oh, look, I can do that.
Much simpler.
Yeah. And then the fines, we were gonna do first, second, and third as 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Okay,
And so,
and civil, how are we going to, do you know that process?
There's language proposed by the lawyers, or just.
Okay.
But then there's something. They were supposed to do a presentation at the legislature this week, but it got pushed until next week.
so if we rescind the law, that all goes away and the new one will.
The new one will be
So,
simple.
that's-
Well, you'll still have the criminal because you have to, but you'll have the option to go civil, which is my option most of the time. Because it just doesn't make sense.
Does the fine determine whether it's civil or criminal? No, okay, all right.
and as far as,
Yeah, well, yeah.
as far as no residential use of street level, I know we have a law, did we want to tighten that one up too?
We have to tighten, it's not really a law, it's a suggested
Okay,
practice when reviewing properties in the historical
Okay.
district.
Historical.
so we have that on the list to tighten up,
Yes,
for sure? Okay,
Yes.
Good. And then the other email that I've gotten is, they were asking the question of, if it's a 90-day limit, are my family and friends allowed to use it, or does that count for my 90 days? My opinion is, if your family and friends come and stay with you, no, but if you get out of the house and let them use it, yes. I know it comes down to enforcement, but how would we ever differentiate between saying, oh, it's a friend?
Sorry.
But I mean, really, that's the battle. Does anyone have an opinion on that one? Like I say, if you've got friends coming over, you usually don't get out of your house when they come.
Yeah.
So if they are gonna get out of the
I don't know
house,
how we can disallow that to let somebody.
well, how do we know that it's not, unless we have some kind of a procedure that you tell us,
I don't know, that's
I mean,
been the
that's what
struggle,
makes
that's been the struggle the whole
night
time.
limit, hard in general.
So if we don't do that, then how do we ever enforce it?
If I own a house as a second home, I want somebody to be able to use it, because if I can't disallow that.
So how do we ever enforce
I
that
don't-
someone
I
that
don't-
finds a way to book someone offline and says, oh, it's a friend?
Yeah.
So like I
No,
say, you can't
because one
just,
is booked through the internet,
right,
and
but
that's
you
the
can't
scrubbers have
disallow
to be able
someone.
to
I
find
agree
it.
with you on that, but it can count towards your 90 days that you can rent. If you want to let your friends use it, fine, but it counts as one of your 90 days that you can rent for the year.
I don't agree with that.
so in listening to a conversation had between the MuniRes, there is a module of software that may help us, that the town has been discussing whether to continue, because it does cost more money. I think Mike is in favor of continuing this, and what I saw was a calendar of a unit, and it did show how many days it was rented. Of course, it,
Shows how many days.
correct, how many days it was booked. We just need to utilize it more. I think that's our only avenue for checking to see. But again, it's also neighbors trying to, saying you used it more days than you were supposed to, but at least there's some sort of verification that's online. I don't know if you think it would be a good tool.
Oh, we need that module.
We do, right, you argued for keeping the module. We have it now.
We have it now.
But-
We've used it.
I mean, anytime you have a rental, there's a sale, there's money transfer, it should be able to be tracked.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
where
you
it's
rent
your
my
friend
place this
using
year, and
your
next year I
friends.
say, don't go on bed and breakfast or B&B, just pay me the money directly. I won't even charge you tax. So what do? You come to me, and oh, that was a friend of mine. So now now you're up to however many of these people return.
And no software is going to scrub that. I
No.
mean, that is obviously,
Can you shed any light on that?
What you're saying is exactly true. You can't.
So if we want any control, fine.
Even the days that we can identify where booked. Again, we don't know if they were rented days or they were just friends using the house or the owner blocked off a month for in the summertime to come up with family. We don't know that. Now, if we see constant activity throughout the year, we can question them and make them prove it. But, come in, because Airbnb, whoever they use, will be able to give them a report to show exactly what days they rented, because they pay the taxes, right?
And so I don't know how it works, the scrubbers work. So if you own a house on Hillcrest and you block out 45 days in the middle of the summer, is the scrubber gonna pick that up?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
so,
so it's fault.
Right.
You should be able to use your own house too. It shouldn't count towards your 90 days.
That's the issue with enforcement. You
Yeah.
have to be able to prove that it's a rented day. That's the only thing we're regulating. We're not regulating the use of your own personal house. We're regulating the rental of your house.
Well, let me ask the question, how many of you have ever moved out of your house so that a friend or a family member could come in and use your house?
Well, I'm not saying that
No, I'm just
part of
asking
it.
that question. How many of you have ever done that? I've never even thought of doing it.
Well, this is a second home situation, where people have a true second home.
Well, then they should list the people on the second home that are usable, can use it. Otherwise, just count it as one of your days. I mean, otherwise, it's the Wild West. But I think if we don't do something now, we'll probably be doing it next year, but I'll just pose the question to you guys.
It's not enforceable.
Well, we don't, well, that's the whole candle and all out. A lot of this is how we're gonna be doing the enforcement. Fine, I mean, I'm fine with it, we don't wanna do anything, but we'll just see if there's abuse, and if there is, we'll work on it next year.
Because you see like if somebody is up here and they're here for 120 days and then they rent it out for 90, it looks like it's got 210 days of activity on it, when really it only has 90 days of rental.
Yeah, no,
That's where it's in
I see
person.
what you're saying, is that the person that owns the house, I wanna use it for the month of July, so I block it out, it looks like.
And so the scrubbers are like, yeah, it's rented for the month of July, but it's not.
Yeah, you can follow the money, and then that's the
So
solution.
can we follow the money? is the question.
I don't know. I mean,
Not
No.
accurately.
No.
If it's cash, of course not, but if they.
But even if they.
Most people.
Even if it's booked through Airbnb, the software companies don't have permissions to go into people's accounts to get that kind of, how much money they're making. They estimate how much money people are making based on the number of days that are blocked out. Based on this, the listing says this, this month of night, so they do these calculations, so you see, month of March, 20 days rented, or 20 days activity, so much in cash, because that's what they charge for night, rent, which is met, right? If you don't know that those 20 days were all rental days, because, people came up for whatever spring break, whatever time of year it is, and used the house themselves, or they came up with their friends, and they went skiing, or whatever. So it's it's impossible to tell exactly if it's a rental.
So are we, I'll throw the question out there because we're spending so much time on
I
it.
know.
We're not allowing any more unhosted rentals in the residential areas. So are we being silly to say that it's 90 days when we can't really do anything about it?
Well, the other thing too is, like I say, let's let it go. Let's see if we get a big abuse, and if we do, we go back and revisit it.
Because the 90 days is put in place so not to have the investment properties, like have somebody come in and buy 4 houses, which
Let's also limit the number of times people have to have vacation rentals next in residential neighborhoods. That was my overall, I mean, with our long range objective is
To
to have residential.
disincentivize people to do it.
Right.
That was the whole point of the 90-day.
And the side effect was it did get rid of unprofessional listing. That's not much of a portfolio, you can only rent it 4th of the year.
did you want to talk about capping? The capping permits.
I think we did.
We did talk about it, and I don't think we came to a resolution.
Well, we said we couldn't do the moratorium if we didn't get rid of the moratorium for the corridor, if we capped. That's what we decided.
I don't see any reason to cap because we'd be capping in Main Street.
We'd be capping in the
corridor.
places we want development,
Okay,
because the other stuff's gonna go way over
And
time.
there's not that much left.
okay, just currently, I don't know if it's changed, but the town is capping permits. Lodging, their lodging permit, which is including the planned developments and the condominiums, they're not gonna cap that. Unhosted permits, they're gonna be capped at 165. Currently, they have 150.
Because they have a lot of space out there.
Space,
Okay.
more so than the village, yeah.
And then hosted permits, they're capping at 48, and currently they have 38 permits. So
Capping hosted?
they're capping hosted.
I mean, if we had 40
Just-
people that were able to finally buy a home in Lake Placid, live here because they rented out while they were on the property. I don't see that as a problem.
Oh,
And we aren't allowing any new permits in our residential areas. There's nothing capped there. And that would just leave
The
corridor, and that's where we're trying to push people.
Okay.
So I think as far as I'm concerned, the capping is.
and we can revisit it next year if we need to.
That's
We
right.
can.
But then the only question I come back to, and I've probably been told 3 times, I'm still a little confused. I know there's a different set of rules for Main Street entranceway corridors of how many STRs you can have on a property. It's the same,
It's the same,
no cap.
no
You can
cap.
have as many as you want.
That's correct.
Is that the way we want to leave that? And the one I'm thinking of is apartment building. We've already had one on Sentinel Road that used to host 4 or 5 apartments. Now it's all vacation rentals, and we've lost 5 rental apartments. Do we want to allow people to have 1 or 2, and that's all? Or do we want to allow someone to come in, buy these places and turn all 5 into STRs?
What's the, okay, post office up here, Upper Parkside. We were told that they can only, like, the Peacocks can only have 1 STR.
Upper
In-
Parkside
Yeah,
is,
in the Peacock.
is
Village Center, right?
is Village Center, Upper Parkside.
Can you help us with that one? Is that the case? I feel
We-
better
we were
about my
told, 'cause
question.
we-
No one
we-
really knows the answer.
We went around that, should we make that part of village residential or not?
Yeah, yeah.
But we said no, because they can only have 1 STR per building. How is that different than?
Let's
So
find
the
out what
difference
law
between
is.
Village Center and Village Residential is Village Center's business district.
Yes, but what is,
Is that business district on Parkside from post office down this way?
I think so. It's just. Upper
well, the
Parkside.
reason we left it is because.
Yeah, well, there's
We had this
Peacocks,
discussion.
Touch of Glass, Jerry's, I
It's
mean,
on Main Street.
no, it's on
Oh, the
Parkside.
backside.
Yeah, yeah.
Backside, yeah. So that's in Village Center.
But what is the law? How many STRs on the property can you have?
It's unlimited,
Now
unlimited
it's unlimited.
Unlimited.
Village Center.
units and unlimited the
So
number
if
of
you have an
nights.
8-bedroom apartment, you can have a short-term rental.
Okay, and then the same thing in the Gateway Corridor.
Yes,
Do we want to change that? I mean, this is the time to do it if you're going to do it. I mean, otherwise, like I say, it's like Greenwood, we thought that was a given, that was great the way it was, and it's turning out not to be. Wanted a building you guys could sell, and all of a sudden, how many apartments do you have in there?
30.
30, all of a sudden you have 30 STRs on Main Street and you lose 30 rentals. Do we want to limit it to a number, 1, 2, something? You had some insight on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's 2 points on it. Like, STRs are fairly competitive right now. The market is, we're not even rented this coming weekend. So is somebody really gonna wanna stay in a 30 apartment STR thing on Main Street when they could stay lakefront below the bookstore on the lake? Like, there's more to, you can't just turn a building into an STR. There's a lot that goes into it. And then from a management standpoint, you would have to have how many cleaners to turn over 30 STRs? It's just not,
you don't think it's practical.
it's not practical.
Well, if it isn't,
It's not attractive
is there any
to
reason
the
to say
traveler.
that you can't have more than 2 per building?
So that's
Is there any
the
downside to
the
that?
Republican in me. I think STRs are a business, and you're telling somebody who has a commercial property that they can't run the business that they want to in that building. I have a really hard time
Well,
saying.
but if you're saying that, you may as well just jump into the residentials and say the same thing. It's my house, I should be able to do what I want. We're trying to
No,
have people live
This
here
is
and
the
be able to rent,
commercial district versus.
but still.
no, it
I
has
get
nothing to
your-
do
I
with the
get your
residential
point. I
district.
get your point, but it'd be interesting. You've got both sides. We'll see which way you vote. Which way do you go? Should we limit it to a building can only
No, I
have
mean,
2
I just think
STRs?
of, we shouldn't incentivize somebody to tear the Four Seasons down and build all, let's say, vacation homes there on that property.
You think they should?
They shouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it should be limited in some way.
So picking a number like 2 or 4 or something. What about you? We don't have to do this today. It's another big question, but if we could do it, I think we're almost done.
I'm with Mark.
Oh, it might be a 2
As
and
far as
2 here.
no limit.
Yeah.
Well, and once again, if we make a mistake, come back next year and say, well, that was a dumb thing.
I mean, he's got a point. There is a lot to turning it into a short-term rental. I can't imagine a building like yours. I mean, how big is,
But I mean, like, we're talking about the wonder now?
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
okay. There's the lakeside, the Lakeview apartments, they go for $1,500 a night. Those are really nice. They're big and they're super nice. There's other ones that no way in hell you could rent it for as they are vacational. But there's some of them you could turn.
but to Mark's
6, 7.
point, who wants to stay in that type of, I mean,
Or, I mean, I don't know what the answer is.
Which way do you vote? I know you're doing this on both sides.
So it's,
I just don't want to incentivize somebody to do it.
I agree.
That's where if you limit it, then
Well, and once again, once someone does it, it's too late.
or you say
again.
something
Well,
like this, where you can have 1 short-term rental for every 2 long-term rentals you have in your building.
something like that.
or time out. I mean, again, it's the same principle,
That's good.
but it's the same principle of we're allowing people who own their own home to supplement their income so that they can pay their taxes. I mean,
Someone who owns their own building.
if somebody wants to own a building, and if STRs are going to help them supplement their property tax, it's the same principle
Okay,
as,
so you brought up a great question. Let's say you bought a big old house up on Signal Hill. Can you have 5 STRs in there and live on the property?
you could if we didn't eliminate bed and breakfast.
But how many is it? If you have a property, you can only have 1 STR in the property. Is that what the law says in a residential?
If it's hosted,
If it's hosted, you can,
No, only one in residential.
okay.
only one.
Only in cars.
Oh, okay. So in Village Center,
I like asking tough questions.
I'm still sticking with Mark.
I don't know which way.
I don't even know.
He just proposed like,
So
For
one
every-
STR for every
one,
2
2.
long-term.
I mean, that's, the math works for everybody.
One
So they-
STR for every 2 long-terms.
Somehow, no matter what we do.
Well, I just threw it out.
I know,
random
I know,
number.
I
I
get
don't
it.
know what it is. Could be 1 to 1.
1 to 3.
What do you say?
You want to say something, don't you?
No, sorry, yes, I do. A percentage, I think, is fair, because then you have the opportunity to utilize some of your property for short-term rentals, and you also stick to the principle of trying to retain long-term rental, 25%. 1 to 4.
One
That's the Bill's vote.
1 to 4.
What do you think?
And again, the short-term rental, like it does in my building, it helps keep the rents for my 2 long-term tenants low, on the
I get
much
that,
lower
yeah.
side.
But you don't have the 1 to 4 ratio. You have the 1 to 2 ratio.
Right, but you at least allowed 1.
Yeah.
So if you have 5 or more units, it's 1 to 4.
Well,
Oh, man, we're just creating more.
Now you're gonna complicate it.
Yeah, really?
if you
A lot of
only have,
unintended consequences.
if you have 4 or less, or 3 or less, you can only have 1. And if you have more for every 4 you have, if
Hang
that's
on,
the number we use, you
I gotta
can
write this
have
down. Hang on.
1 for every 4 if you choose. And the really good thing about that is that it's going to keep them quiet because you're not going to have 3 long-term residents being bothered by 1 loud short-term rental person.
Sort of it's quasi-hosted.
Yeah, and once again, with the apartment building complex, let's say on Sentinel Road, if there are 4 places, 1 for STR and 3 that aren't, and that helps them keep the building up nicer, and I get that, that's actually not a bad compromise.
Okay.
Okay,
So what's the town doing in that regard? Any idea?
You're talking about the Wild Wild West, I don't think there is.
I don't necessarily know if they have the same problem. They may have maybe 1 or 2, but I don't think they have the same problem we do.
I'm trying to think of what
I'm
we're
trying,
doing.
where? Think of something.
Yeah, I don't,
I can't think of anything.
Braybrook.
Well, whichever, that becomes their problem. Do we like the idea of a ratio? And if we do like the idea, then what's the number? Anyone want to start?
It's fun. I like the idea of a ratio, but I also don't like the idea of trying to regulate commercial.
What's your
industry.
ratio?
I don't know.
What's your ratio?
Well, again, the problem is, okay, you got 3 to 1, but then what if you have the fourth one, fifth? When do you get to have the second one?
If you have 6 places, and you could have, say it's 3, you'd have another one after the next 3. Or if you wanted, you could start with, you initially get 1, and if you have 4, then you'd be able to have 2 because you have another 3. I mean, we can do anything you want. You can have a starting point. We just have to agree that's the direction we want to go. We can figure out the details.
I just want to see a little more specific, like what is going on right now. How many apartments are, there's a ton of apartments on Main Street, so how does that affect all those
And Sentinel
buildings?
Road, and
Yeah,
like I say, I can name 3 people that got displaced, bang, right off the bat.
All right, so is that something we're coming back to?
I don't know, what do you guys want?
I'm okay with the ratio.
Would you recommend which ratio ought to be? Do you want to go 1 to 4, 1 to 3, 2?
1 to 2?
1 to 1.
I think 1 to 2, then. Again, because we're incentivizing corridor.
I
One
would
unit
go-
to every 2.
I like the 1 to 4, I would compromise at 1 to 3. That's a good religious number.
1 STR to every 2 long-term.
I didn't get more of my debate than
Or 3.
or 3.
I think 2 is probably more real. I mean, like I said, I'd have to see specifics, like how many.
Well, I
apartments are
like the
where.
fact that you've made the statement that your STR helps keep rents affordable. Can 1 short-term rental help with 2 long-term rents, keeping them affordable?
Yeah.
Or it can? I mean, there's the basic maintenance of every unit, so,
I mean, part of the reason that our apartment buildings, many of them are, what the hell, is because there's not enough income relative to the cost of maintaining a building. It costs a fortune nowadays.
Well, here's an interesting argument. If it's nothing but rentals, sometimes the building can be kept pretty shabby, but if you're gonna rent this, even one of the rooms and there's an STR, you've got to make it look attractive.
Yeah, the whole building, you need to make it
The
look
whole
attractive.
building look nicer.
Yep.
I like the 1 to 3 idea. My straw vote is that, Mark, throw a number.
If I had to do a ratio, it would be more either 1 to 1 or 1 to 2.
Say 1 to 2.
I'd say 1 to 2.
Let's go with 1 to 2, just to be done. And if it's a problem, next year we revisit it.
And then obviously people are grandfathered in because there's a
Yes.
couple
That's right,
buildings.
yep.
Yes,
At least we've got something, and that's Main Street and Gateway Corridor, right?
yes.
I hate to even ask this question, is there anything else we haven't discussed before we kind of say we're done?
Yes.
So if there's a sale of the Haas building, whatever the hell it's called,
That's a hotel or motel, isn't it? Mike?
that's a hotel.
That doesn't count.
Right. And that stays with the property.
Well, it's a motel, anyone can open a motel, right?
Well,
In the proper
it's
district.
you more than
Right.
given it the conditional use.
Yeah.
Change the one into a hotel.
All right, wait, there is one more thing I don't know, maybe.
Well, you could change any building with more than 4 apartments into a hotel.
Hang on.
But we have to go through the review
No
board.
review board.
11.6 miscellaneous, all short-term rental properties must have a water meter for water and sewer provided by the village.
I mean, that is a direction we're headed with everybody, right?
Over time, they're all gonna have meters.
Okay, but what about the properties that can't have meters?
Well, everyone's exempt, and can't have a meter, we just have to work something out.
Just
Okay.
have to, they have to be charged
All right, I just,
base 2,000 cubic feet.
But I do think don't we want to agree on that we're keeping, if you're going to have an STR, you have to have a water meter?
Yeah,
If you're gonna make everybody do water meters, I would.
I think we are.
Create a
We're
local.
working
mean,
towards that, yes.
oh, okay,
a local
I don't know
law
why
that says-
Craig, Jason always complained about making everybody in the village have a water meter, and Craig always caved on it. And I think we should go that route anyway.
But but I don't think it should
But
be-
then
I don't
it's,
think it should be a requirement
it's
of
not, we're not
short-term
requiring,
You don't think it
rental.
should be?
We don't enforce that now. I'm not gonna, I got a lot of reasons why, but it's not stopping people from getting a permit if they don't have a water meter. Because I don't know who can or who can't fit it in. And
Well,
it's not-
when you
because they can tell you, the water department can tell
And
you.
they have, and they reach out.
So
to
you
people
just
and they
wait
keep trying
to issue the permit until you hear from the water.
Well,
I'm not gonna do that. It's not, it's not.
Well, it's in the law and you're not doing it,
That part I'm not doing.
even though it's in the law.
It's a requirement, they affirm that they have they affirm on there's, what do you call it, that they have a water meter, they get a permit. That's all I'm required.
And if they lie on their permit, does that mean we can take away their STR license?
You got it.
We can take them to court, if that's what you want to do. We'll have a bunch of lawsuits that you can deal with, and again, that's why I'm not pushing anybody to do that. It should be a
Our
local
position would
law
be stronger if we required everyone to have a home
Right.
meter.
a local law.
Legal position.
Right, but how fast do they have to do it? Change of use of the house like everybody else is grandfathered? Are we going to,
No, immediately.
you're talking a lot of money there.
Again, this, you want the money, this is, you know.
It doesn't happen overnight anyway,
Oh, right.
It happens over the years. But it should be the village's position to require a water meter.
Right, and how fair is that to people that do have water meters versus people that don't have water meters?
That's water the lawn, you know who doesn't have water meter because they don't water the lawn and never shut it off.
Whether they're a rental or not. It doesn't happen.
So
For
it's-
every resident, every taxpayer will have to do something.
Because isn't it required in the town?
Yeah.
They're already required, they
Yeah.
don't.
Unless they can't.
Is it, wait,
It's not required in the village, just the town.
And, we've proposed this forever, and like I said, Craig always just
I don't want to
didn't do anything about it. At your house, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, so we,
The only people that are probably using it for rentals is people with hot tubs that empty them on a regular basis.
yeah,
Other than that, it's, 2,000 gallons a month or whatever you get, a lot of
you
before
feed
you
over 3 months.
Yeah, for a normal single family living there isn't going over that most of the time. No, some renters aren't coming up and bringing all their laundry and washing the dog and the cat, you know what I mean? It's just.
But the issue was the bigger houses versus the smaller
Right,
houses.
right.
Bigger houses are going over. They have
Maybe,
wells,
yeah,
if
I
they have
don't
a
know.
well.
I don't know that for a fact. They just tell me if they have a, water department stuff in the shore, don't tell me how much they're spending. Again, I don't want to get the bill. That should be a local law, you guys want to require everybody in the village. to have a water
Our
meter?
legal position would be, if we just made a law.
Yeah,
yeah,
it
exactly.
should be separate from this, I don't know how it got in there, but
Okay,
if they sign the affidavit and they swear that they have it, I'm not going looking for a water meter in the house.
and then
It's not a-
we can talk about that in board meeting and,
Another workshop.
yeah.
I'm only concerned about life and safety stuff and water meter.
Perfect.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
That was it.
We're gonna discuss water meters in the village at our next workshop.
Okay, I got that down too.
The only other thing I wanted to add, and so these affidavits that you have to fill out, I had mentioned that just giving any civil penalty more teeth, what would you say to having it notarized? The affidavit, I know it would create more paperwork, and the paperwork, it's done online and it goes through and it winds up on their desk.
Well, it doesn't go on the desk.
Well,
It stays in the computer.
it stays in the
It stays at
computer.
the bottom of the thing, and you also, you sign, it says legally binding.
That is legally binding, but they can't say, oh, I didn't read that.
Well, they can say whatever they want.
But you signed it.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
So,
Okay.
again,
All right,
If you're going 40 down Main Street, and didn't know it was 30, it's your job.
that was just a thought I had, that's fine. If you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. I'm good.
Anything else?
Nope.
That's scary. Does it mean we've actually done this after
Maybe.
how many years is it, Bill? 8 or
So we just
12?
need, now we need lawyers to,
Yes, yeah, we
Did
just,
you want to add something?
I have a question.
Sure.
How are you handling change of use for the neighborhoods?
You can always have a hosted. So let's say you're hosted in a neighborhood, is that what you're saying?
Hosted, unhosted,
So if you're hosted and you sell your house, you lose the permit. the next person would have to sign up for one, because you can always sign up for one, it wouldn't limit them.
Being hosted.
That's correct. And if you're unhosted, once you change of use at this point,
There's no more.
you're now moving
And I thought
out.
there was some question as far as passing it on to your daughter, your son.
Yes,
Well, if they want to keep it in the parent's name, fine, but if they,
Hosted, you're talking about?
So-
Or on a host.
Unhosted.
Unhosted.
No,
no, not in town or village residential.
I mean, I can see why you're getting close to maybe going into a nursing home, you want to get it out of your name, but that does. So I'm just saying, I'm trying to think of reasons why people.
Word it up, Bill.
He's still working 5 days a week.
But I can see why people would be interested in doing that, but that doesn't, you know, and our opinion is they've had all these years as a vacation rental, pay off the mortgage and use
They're
it.
always gonna find
Yeah,
something else that
exactly.
they give it to. Where do you draw the line?
and how do you put the language in? And, yeah, exactly. Is it a daughter? Is it a cousin? Is it a second cousin on this side?
Stepdaughter?
But somewhere, Jackie, you can help us.
Janet actually did, and I'm trying to find it.
I mean, like if you put the house in your name in a trust so that when you pass away, your children get it, fine, but then it's a change of use.
It's a change of use, it's not currently,
Right, but while
currently
they're,
it's not accepted as the way Janet had written, and again, wish I could find it. But it's if, the one issue is if Peter and I buy a house and create an LLC, the LLC actually owns the permit. If I sell my share to Art, it's still the LLC owning the permit, so there is no change of use. It's when Peter sells his house to me and I go apply for a permit. Janet, we're gonna talk to Janet when she gets back about what about letting children, but you and I had talked about that. And it's at the time, the owner of record, so if Art and I buy a house and we have a child and we could put that name, the child's name on as an owner of record at that time, and then we could pass it on. But any trusts, no. Any LLCs, yes, because the LLC, if I've got this right, and I apologize,
When we change members of the LLC, it goes away.
no, because legally it can't, because the LLC is the owner of the permit.
but then tell me this. So all
Correct.
it's- So all you have to, so all you have to do is have a corporation.
Everybody's gonna just form LLCs.
Don't, that's what they've done.
Or corporate, they're like.
Most are now already.
Yeah, exactly, limited liability.
Well,
Then this will, they'll never go away then.
Well, then the answer to that is that all LLCs, twilight in 5 years, we can no longer have an STR. We can make the rules any way we want, correct?
Anyone who rents their home would be silly not to have it in a corporation.
So then what you're saying is, if that's the case, all you gotta do is you're getting ready to sell to me, you put me on your LLC, and then you go off of it, and now I keep the same one I've gotten around our grandfather.
I mean, the existing law says
You know
if
what I'm
any
saying?
member,
Hang on, let me see. if
I'm
I-
not saying it's not a problem, but.
Yeah, right. Well, we're gonna definitely,
All right, here, I found it, and
well, we'll have to have Janet sit and explain all that to us.
if I can read what she wrote preliminarily. For purposes of the local law, change in ownership shall mean any transfer of ownership, whether by deed, by membership interest in the case of a limited liability company, by partnership interest in the case of a partnership, or by shareholder interest in the case of a corporation. Change in ownership shall not apply in the instance where there are two or more owners and an owner or owners die, leaving surviving joint tenants with right of survivorship or tenants by the entirety as owners, nor shall change in ownership apply when husband and wife convey to husband and wife.
Yeah.
Nor shall change in ownership apply where individuals transfer the property for no consideration to an entity of which the transfers are principals. That one I don't understand.
Well, I think let's ask,
Yeah.
let's get
people
clear.
put
So-
their children on a deed, and the parents die in that scenario,
Okay,
then there's no.
There's no issue.
There's no issue.
okay.
Well, if they were already there. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what you said is that if you're already a LLC, a corporation, and there's 3 people on it, and one person dies, the other 2 still have the grandfather. But you cannot put another person on there. So that once the principal LLCs that are there, and that's what I believe you just read.
Did I read that?
That's how I understood it.
Okay,
We gotta get Jim.
we got, yeah, when Janet gets back.
Okay, well, that whole area.
I don't, has Mark written anything for the town as far as,
The number one.
okay. Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
I'm glad you understood
But it's
it.
not-
Okay.
I'm good.
Bill, you've been in on this
So
from
I'll
day
talk
one.
about
I
this.
wanted to say it's probably going on how many years? It's probably more like 20.
No, it doesn't, it feels like a long time, yeah. It's been 2 years.
Is there anything we haven't addressed?
No, I think it's good. I think if you stick to your principles and your principles are good, you're in good shape.
Okay. All right. Did we ever get to this point?
Yes,
I think that was the time.
we didn't do it before Peter's off the board.
Still got 6 months. Not that I'm counting.
No, you're not.
How many days, how many hours?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for helping us.
You too.
Okay, so does someone have a note? I do to bring up water meters. And,
Yeah.
And did we come to a conclusion of number of ratio? Main Street corridor, Main Street, did we come up with a number yet?
Yeah,
2 to 1, 1 to 2.
1 to 2, 2 to 1,
2 to 1,
1
okay.
1 to 2.
All right, so
One to
that's,
two.
once we take, first there's cables that won't take place.
Yeah.
So great cables.
Mhm.
And then draw the whole thing.
Okay,
Around the beach.
Yeah, so this side stays fixed and around.
Mhm.
So in that scenario, it silts.
Is this meeting in- do we need a motion to end the meeting?
I don't think we ever opened up.
Yeah,
Yeah, we did with the pledge.
We did, we said with the
It's always-
We said I want to open this with the pledge.
So screen the
Closed meeting?
river.
Yeah.
The outflow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's-
yeah.
I don't know.
Mhm.
Oh,
So that the stuff,
Yeah, what was it?
so that will get loose because some will.
closed, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then
Hey,
pick it up.
Peter, say aye.
Thank you.
And then
You're
you
doing
take
the
the
next
loader,
30
the
minutes.
excavator, 2 loaders, pick up
Yeah.
the dock.
You sure?
A long way, along the beach.
I do, I have exactly
Dock
30
down
minutes.
This way and drag.
You can't leave anyway, your car's
Thank you.
trapped.
No, actually,
Definitely
we're
somewhere.
good. I parked in, what you call it?
I have been working 5 days. I have
Right.
no closer. Every time I try to.
Seriously?
Do you mind just helping me get a few things out of
Sure.
this?
Try and drag it.
Yeah.
Give me like the play.
What is it? I don't know how
Just reschedule the meeting here.
I don't know that one either.
Maybe your personal.
to. My, just a thought. If you take it.
Hi, we're done, so I'm signing off. Thank you. Bye.
Cut your cables, yeah. Put a boomerang first, cut the cables. I'll take the first section, you can take that out. And start bringing it in.
What about this? You're gonna push that button?
Oh.
Oh, you mean the one closest to shore?
I couldn't manage to find it.
The roads never
Emily,
ended.
before we go, should we be setting up a